Well, it's a mix. It's a mix of songs that are known and also obscure tracks that we haven't done for a long, long time. Some stuff we never did at all on other tours. And, people might be wondering, well, we've already heard the well-known songs, the hits, the ones that got a lot of airplay, why are you doing them again? We wanted to give it a fair representation of what the show really was. If you do a show of just obscurities, with none of the known songs, it doesn't balance out. It doesn't really have a good sequence to it. The album hopefully has a flow, as if it was a show from beginning to end. I think the last night was probably the favorite one because we did just about everything we could think of, and we just went for broke, hell bent for leather. We just about played everything, even the obscure stuff. We did different songs every night. We tried to change the setup. We weren't sure if the same people were in the audience from other nights. There were probably some repeaters there. Just to keep ourselves interested, we tried changing up the set every night. But we wanted to include whatever was going to make a good balance for the album in the end. We used the tracks that we thought were the best performances. That was the first thing. It's got to be a good performance. How does it live with the other songs in that set from that night? And then how does it all balance out as one album? Because it's all culled from the 12 nights at the Garden. There's not one particular night where it's all based on that one night. Tried to get a whole representation of 12 nights. At rehearsals, we learned close to 60 songs. We wanted to be able to spin 3 different set lists and see what was going to work, what was not going to work. As we went along, we picked up songs and discarded songs. Some things just didn't work. After a number of shows, even though we liked to do them, if there was just absolutely no response from the audience at all, we just said, well, that's it, pull the plug. And we settled on a rotating group of obscurities, I suppose, or album tracks. Madison Square Garden is a place that's always been the premier venue in New York City. When I was a little kid, it wasn't even in the same location. It was further downtown. It was the old Madison Square Garden. And I went to see the circus there when I was a little boy. My parents took me there, and it was the biggest place I'd ever seen in my life. I went to see Gene Autry sing Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. And he was firing off his guns. I thought he was shooting at me. I was scared to death, but I was thrilled, too. All the big sporting events, like the Muhammad Ali fights, happened at the Garden. We've got all these sports teams, the Knicks, the Rangers, all these championship teams that played at the Garden. All the big shows happened at the Garden. The first big benefit show was the Concert for Bangladesh. And I remember the first supergroup that ever played was Blind Faith, Madison Square Garden. So it's got this incredible history of performing and athletic events, even political conventions at Madison Square Garden. So it's just the history there is palpable. And also, there's a thing that happens at the Garden. It doesn't happen in other venues. It's built on springs. The building actually moves. When the audience is coordinated in their foot stomping, it rocks the room, and it actually goes up and down. I saw it with you, too. I mean, it's happened with me numerous times. I didn't know if it happened with other people, but it did happen with other acts. And you get this rocking sensation. The stage actually goes up and down. And the crowd is rocking the hall.
Right,
I mean, they're really rocking the place. And that's an interesting experience. Well, they couldn't hang me, so they hung the jersey. Well, I actually used to be a boxer. There's a little bit of tie-in there. I used to box and, have dreams of being a championship boxer, but then I got my butt kicked, and I said, well, I'll just be a piano player. Yeah, we're enjoying playing the stuff that we haven't played a lot. We haven't beaten a lot of this stuff to death. We even enjoy sometimes when there is a mistake. We call it a clam. Sometimes a clam, done in the right place at the right time works. I don't know why. I don't know why it happens. And we've done that with studio recordings, too. We did a track called A Room of Our Own, which I think is on this album. It's not even, I don't think it's credited. It's a hidden track. But when we did the original recording of that song, the drummer got mixed up and started playing the beat backwards. Instead of doing 2 and 4, he was playing 1 and 3. And it was such a good track. We just yelled, keep going, don't stop. Boom, da, doom, da, instead of da, boom, da. It was bap, doom, bap, doom, bap. And we said, that works, it works, it works. Leave it. And we listened back, we said, that's incredible because nobody could ever do that purposely. It has to be a grand accident. But I have a theory about that anyway. I think the only original things that we ever do is screw up. You can do something perfectly and it can be done just the way somebody else did it or the way you were told to do it or the way you think you're supposed to do it. But if you make a mistake and it works, that's eureka. That's original. It's completely your own. There's something that happens, too, between knowing and mentally what you're supposed to do and your hands doing something else. Sometimes your hands just do their own thing. And guys who play instruments know this. Most of the time, you're depending on your hands to just kind of do what they're going to do. You don't really think about it, okay, I'm going to play this chord, play that chord. Your hands go there. And then sometimes your hand wants to go somewhere for some perverse reason, even though your mind says, what are you doing? And it works. So, that's the fun about live. I mean, I'm hoping people are going to play this loudly at home. I don't know if you got a cranky neighbor next door and they, you play it too late at night, they're going to bitch about it. To reproduce a live show, you really got to play it loud. They're a really good band. We were just peaking when we started playing the Garden gigs. That was actually back in January. We had already done a couple of weeks on the road. We started in Florida, and we played a few other gigs in the Northeast, and then we started our Garden run. The lineup of the band is somewhat different than it has been in the past. I have a different drummer, a fellow named Chuck Berge, who is a real good timekeeper. I mean, he's just on the money in terms of keeping time, which helps me tremendously in terms of singing. When you know where one is, you know how to breathe, you know how to phrase, you know how to hold a note, and that helps a great deal. And he brought a whole new energy into it. The guitar player's been with me for a long time, Tommy Burns. He's the band leader. He pretty much gets everybody together for rehearsals, and we go over the song list with Tommy, and he's a great director. The bass player, Andy Ciccone, has been with us for a couple of tours. He's a good, solid bass player, and he locked in with Chuck. So the rhythm section was there. Crystal Taliaferro, who's been with me since '89, '88. Multi-instrumentalist, talented woman. She's great to watch on stage. Let's see, we've got Dave Rosenthal on keyboards. He's been with me for a long time now, since the 80s. Really, really talented man. Doesn't always get a lot of attention because he's behind a big bank of keyboards and I'm playing the piano. A lot of people might not know all the things that he's doing. He's playing with both hands and his feet, and he's hitting buttons, and it's like math to me. I don't know how he does it. But he's really, really been great to be with. Let's see, Mark Rivera on the saxophone has been with me since the 80s. Great sax player, great multi-instrumentalist as well, and great vocalist. And Richie Cannata joined us on this particular jaunt. He was with me for the first few albums we did from the 70s into the 80s. I thought it would be a good idea to put together a horn section with Mark, plays saxophones, Richie plays saxophones, Crystal plays saxophone, and a fellow named Carl Fisher, who is also a saxophonist and a trumpet player and a flugelhornist. And we had a nice big fat horn section, so when we needed the beef, there it was. Right. There's room to play around in just about everything. Not a ton of room where you can mess it up. You've got to just pick your spot, and then, we're all kind of playing that game with each other. What's he going to do here? What's Tommy going to do there? What's the drummer going to do here? We enjoy playing. There's a lot of chords in those songs. Great Wall of China that's got a whole lot of complex chord changes. You don't want to think too much when you're playing. You want to just feel it. If you think too much, you might get in trouble. And the lyrics are fun to sing, as is Laura. Same kind of song, in a strange key, makes different strange chord progressions, unexpected moves in the song, and the lyrics are what I call chewy lyrics. You can really sink your teeth into them and sing the words as if you're saying something that's really meaty and chewy and just fun to do. Well, we changed some keys. I know there's been some speculation about, were they in the original keys? Well, no, of course not. I'm in my 50s, and I wrote a lot of this stuff when I was in my 20s. If you try to sing the same way you did in your 20s, you're going to sound bad. You have to make adjustments. So we dropped some of the songs a half tone. Some of them, very few of them, a whole tone. But it makes a big difference because I've got more thickness in the bottom end of the voice, and I'm still stretching to hit the high notes. And like I said, the drummer keeps such good time that I can phrase now. I know how to breathe better. And when I know where one is on 1, 2, 3, 4, you know where you're going to land, and it helps. Well, that goes back to '76. Angry Young Man was from the Turnstiles album, and it's become sort of a live staple. It really, really works well in a live context. It's got a lot of dynamic, and we've found that it's a good opening song. It's got a lot of fast piano movement and some orchestral aspects to it, and then it goes into this galloping verse. It's difficult to recover from, actually, as a first song. I'm always thinking, God, I've got to start off with this. Where do I go from here? But it works as an opener. Yeah, My Life sits in the second song slot in a live show, which is always a difficult transition to go from the big opener and now where you're going to go. And you can't stay at the same pace, and you can't go too slow. You can't drop dead from it. So you need kind of a mid-tempo, and My Life has a walking beat, dum, bum, dum, bum, dum, bum, dum, and it just keeps the momentum going. That's from 70, 71, from the Cold Spring Harbor album, and I always liked that song. I always liked doing that song. It's almost a folk song from the kind of a Dylan feel, and it just felt good in the third slot. The Ballad Kid is from 73, the Piano Man album, and sort of an orchestral arrangement to that song. Cinematic, I guess. I was thinking of writing a movie soundtrack when I wrote that song, and it's got that kind of Magnificent Seven feeling. The Entertainer is from 75, from the Street Life Serenade album, which is not really a well-known album. I think there was only one track that got any airplay from that album. And The Entertainer is kind of a sardonic song, is my take on the music industry at the time. It's not necessarily autobiographical. It's about being an entertainer in general, but it's got a good chug to it. Banging guitars and chugging guitars, and we weren't sure how that was going to be received. We haven't done that song for years and years and years until this tour. And then all of a sudden the audiences were responding to it. We were looking at each other like, hey, we just found a $5 bill. Vienna, that's from the Stranger album, 77. Always a fun track to play. It's got just a good tempo to it. It's sort of a slow to mid-tempo feel, and very, very simple, very spare, but it's got kind of a grand performance to it. And I like the sentiment in that song a lot. A lot of people in the audience seem to respond to that one too. Yeah, that was from Greatest Hits Volumes 1 and 2, and it was an extra track that we had. Columbia Records wanted to put something that hadn't been heard before on a Greatest Hits package. So that song was, I don't think we ever did it. I think we rehearsed it, and we said, well, we like playing it, and it feels good, but I don't think anybody's going to know it, so we just didn't bother doing it for a long, long time. My daughter was the one who was actually pushing me to do that song. Yeah, it's a little surreal lyric in it. It doesn't really tell a story as much as just portray an emotion. Zanzibar, we've got, like I said, a great horn player, Carl Fisher. The original guy on the record was Freddie Hubbard, is a great, great jazz trumpet player. And we liked doing this. So I remember after we cut it in the studio back in the 70s on 52nd Street album, we felt like grown-ups. We said, well, we played jazz. We walked down and we looked at each other, wow, now we're grown-up, we're adults, we play jazz. Maybe this is as close as I think we've gotten to playing real jazz, but it's so much fun just to get into that realm a little bit and feel like you might have touched the hem of one of these great jazz groups. Well, Miami 2017 is kind of a staple to do in New York. Sort of an apocalyptic vision, a science fiction song that I wrote back in the 70s. And Garden Crowd, I think, expects that one. Great Wall of China, we started doing on this tour. I just insisted on doing that song. Didn't always get the response we had hoped because it was obscure to a lot of people. It was an album track from the River Dreams album, but it's just got so many interesting, fun chord changes and musical development in it. There's a lot of emotion in that song too, lyrically. Allentown is another fun mid-tempo song. It has, again, a kind of a built-in chug in it. It's an industrial sound. She's Right on Time. That's the only song I ever wrote that you could call a Christmas song. And when we started doing the tour, it was right after Christmas. It's one of the most fun songs that I ever wrote. Writing is never a lot of fun for me. It's kind of a painful experience. But She's Right on Time came kind of naturally, and the harmonies in it were always fun to do if you nail them just right. There's a neat little break in the middle of bridge, which I love. I love to write bridges. That's one of those songs that's got a neat little bridge, which is almost a little song in itself. Don't Ask Me Why is from Glass Houses, about 1980. Sort of a Latin beat. It's kind of a Bo Diddley beat, a boom, 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 chicka, boom, boom, and it done with a kind of a Latin flair, with castanets, and it's fun to do. Another one of those meaty, chewy songs. And there's a bad word in there, so I tried to come up with a different word. I really did. Here I am feeling like a fool. And well, there's a certain alliteration to it. Fool. What's gonna work? Frickin' that doesn't work. And you have to say the word and just I always think about me taking my little girl there, years ago, and if some guy had said that word, she would look at me and go, "Why did he say that word, Daddy? What does that word mean?" Oh, now I gotta explain it. Different nights we had guys from the Marines, guys from the Army, guys from the Navy, the different services. We invited a lot of those guys, the servicemen, to the show. And we said, well, hey, look, we invited you guys. Why don't you get up on stage and help us out with the chorus? Because you need a lot of masked voices to sing that chorus. We would all go down together, and it's a moving moment. It's taken on a different meaning because there was a Broadway show titled after that, and the drummer was in that show. He was the drummer in the Broadway show, Chuck Berge. So we kind of look at that as his song. An Innocent Man is my tribute to the songs of Lieber and Stoller and guys like Benny King, the Drifters. It's got that sort of a Latin slow bass, boom, ding, 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 ding. Some nights I would start it off with Stand By Me. Downeaster Alexa is fun to play live. It's got a backwards drum beat to it. Normally you'd play on the backbeat on a song with that rhythm in it, but this one we played on 1 and 3, which gives it a folk feeling, almost a Celtic rhythm to it. And if my throat is in good shape, I always feel like I enjoy singing that song because you got to really reach up there and you got to go soaring into the vocal. And I think we nailed it. She's always a woman we didn't do for a long time. We used to do it in the old days, 70s and 80s, and we didn't do it for a long, long time. We hadn't done it, and we didn't know what the audience response was going to be. And I said, let's just try it. And we just pulled it out one night, and the crowd sang the whole song. They all knew the lyrics. And we were looking at each other like, whoa, that was a good find. Came across another $20 bill, and we kept that in the show. River Dreams, again, we got the horns, the vocals, a lot of percussion in that song, and Crystal shines on that one. I kind of get carried away sometimes in that song. There's a little section in the middle where there's a break and nobody plays anything. I never know what I'm going to do, and the band is always watching me like, what is he going to do? How long is the break going to be? And I never know what I'm going to do. And some nights when I'm carried away, I just forget myself. Oh, right, we got to go back into the song. Keeping the Faith starts the whole section of the show where the horn section really starts playing. Those big fat fills, and it's just got a fun rhythm. It's based on an old record by, I think it was Betty Wright, and that guitar riff is just infectious. We start the fire. I play guitar badly. They keep me so far down in the mix. It's a change for me, getting up from the piano and trying to play guitar. And I'm always worried every night, am I going to forget a lyric? A lot of times I'm looking down in the audience, hoping somebody is singing the lyrics, and I'm going to read their lips. If I mess up one lyric, it's a train wreck. I used to keep a book on the piano of the lyrics, which really doesn't work. If you get stuck, you can't turn the page and find the line. But if the teleprompter is reading it, if you forget, you can always look over to it. I use it as a security blanket. I don't really need it. But you know what? If it's not there, I'm freaking out. It's, where's the teleprompter? And I don't need it till the minute it goes out. Big Shot has always been fun to do. It was one of the first songs I actually got up from the piano and moved around on the stage. I'm not a front man. I'm not Mick Jagger. I just don't look like him. I don't have the body for it. But it's one of those songs. It's kind of a self-parody. It's making fun of yourself. So I just figured I'll go to hell with myself in this song. I jumped up and ran around, and sometimes I run out of breath. But I realized as I was doing it on this tour, it could be a hip-hop song. And, I stick the baseball hat on, and I get into the character, and it's fun. You May Be Right always starts off the whole end part of the show. Good guitar song, it's got a good sax solo in it, and the audience is singing along on that one as well. It's just a party song. All the girls know the words to that one. It's sort of a guy trying to tempt a girl to do something that she shouldn't do. And it's fun to hear the audience knowing the lyrics to that one. Scenes from Italian Restaurant, that's sort of a suite. It's a combination of 3 or 4 songs all put together, sort of almost like an Abbey Road thing. I don't want to compare myself to the Beatles, but same principle. And that is, again, the audience is singing along on that one. It's a great, audience participation song, and it has different rhythms in it too. It's always fun to do. Well, it gives me, they give me a nice break. The crowd sings, the chorus sings a song on the piano, and I'm like, thank God you work for a while, because I always need to take a breath. But some nights we may be playing in a place where it's not a guarantee that the audience is going to sing along, and when I stop singing, you never know what's going to happen.
Right.
So we're taking a chance. The song was done at the end of the Stormfront album. The Stormfront album has a dynamic to it, almost like a storm, builds up, and then it dissipates into kind of a calm. And then so it ends that album, and it was meant to be in that spot. And at the end of the show, it makes sense to have something that's that soft and that quiet, because you've built and you've built and you've built, and now it's sort of the calm after the storm.